I'm Johnny Hamill, and welcome to Jammin' with Johnny, KC Bass Stream. I have a unique way of life as a bass player and music educator. I felt like having a podcast long overdue. I'll talk shop with all my creative friends and shine light on things happening in KC. Today we talked to Caitlin Crosby, a fantastic bass player doing her undergrad, and she's really come on as a composer. And so we'll listen to her compositions and what inspired her to go from playing the bass into composition. This is really great. She is a former student of mine and really just awesome creative mind. So you'll hear her talk about some of the history of coming to the studio and hearing how I was improvising with people and helping them keep the door open to wherever they're going to go in their musical life. So I hope you enjoy that. I hope you like and subscribe to our YouTube and Podbean casts. And if you can, look at the Patreon page. We really appreciate it. Thanks. All right, welcome to Jammin' with Johnny. We have Caitlin Crosby here, who is a former student of mine and now in her third year of being a composer and a bass player at KU, Kansas University, my alma mater, fellow Jayhawk. So I'm really excited to get into why she got inspired to be a composer. She has these cool video game music and just commissioned to compose more. And of course, enjoying playing the bass in college at KU. So we're going to listen to her first example of songs, and we'll actually have a score for you to follow along to. I'll have to scroll along and you can listen to what she's been up to. Before we push play, do you want to say a couple things about this piece?
Yeah, so the title of this piece is Death of the Flowers. It's titled after where I got the text from, which is a poem by William Cullen Bryant, who was an American poet. It's about loss. It's a little melancholy, but I wrote it for, the instrumentation is for me and my roommates originally, because one of my roommates played flute and one of them was a vocalist, and then I played piano, and I recently actually got to hear it performed for the first time because of COVID, so I got to hear it performed live this past December.
Wow.
That's the recording you'll hear.
Oh, let's listen. Okay, nice. Sorry that my iTunes went right into there. So that was fantastic. It was definitely, I was like, oh, that's a different twist. Where are we going now? But you said sorrow, beauty. I mean, that was just very breathtakingly beautiful.
Thank you.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
And so there's something about uh, a piece like that when you have it in your own brain and then do the work of figuring out how to translate it into whatever instruments you have available.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, sometimes inspiration is who you're playing with,
Yeah.
right? And then bringing it into life. It's really quite a journey, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of fun. And when did you feel like how did this piece come about as far as like when you first started going to it? I mean, you said this is the text, but the music. Where did you come from the music?
Well, so one of the reasons I picked this poem in particular was because there was a lot of really vivid like imagery in it, and I thought I could like hear like there's a lot of references to like birds in some of the other movements,
Mm-hmm.
or like the forest, and I could hear like a lot of that in music, and so I thought it was a really good like fit for what I was trying to do. Um, and then the beginning of my process usually starts with just sitting at the piano and improvising for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because this was actually one of the first things I wrote with text, I would also like just kind of sing and see like what words were really important and where did I want the phrases to land.
Nice.
And so then I would kind of couple that with, okay, what chords do I hear underneath that, and where do I think I kind of use the flute a lot as like an accent. So I was like, where can this color like bring out what I'm trying to say? And I kind of wrote each movement as its own piece, and then like tried to find common ground within them to string them all together. So each one has a little bit of a different sound to it. But this third movement is actually the one I wrote first. So
Really?
I kind of sat down and came up with a theme, and I liked this stanza the best, and so I like had that little piano motif, and then I kind of built the vocal line off of that.
So yeah, that's exciting because so the way that I'm hearing that is that you first heard this text and you were like, I really want to create something towards this text, and then you started to find things on the piano that you really liked. So, as I said, where did the original impetus for the composition come from? It sounds like it came from the text,
Yeah,
and
like
then
that's
you
where the inspiration.
paint, and then you put everything next to it. That's really fantastic. Uh, Caitlin is my former student, and she's done the jamming with Johnny uh, deal in full thing. And one of the things that I hold dear, because I am not really a improviser jazz kind of guy. Like I do the same thing when I compose, which is sometimes it's like I get this original thought and I'm going for it, and then I just sit there and I work on it, whether it's on an instrument or in my own thoughts or whatever, until I find it. And then there's like this editing process, and then sometimes then it's like the painful task for me is sometimes writing it down. So you know, especially if I do it on an instrument, right? Then you go like, well, what is that? And that takes time, doesn't it? Yeah, it's kind of a labor of love when you think of it in that regard, and that's really extraordinarily fun for me. And it sounds like it's fun for you too.
It is. It's quite
And,
good.
and one of the reasons why I'm so excited, I definitely want to talk about your bass playing, but I want to talk about your composition aspect because you know, when we first started, you mentioned about composition, but it wasn't like you were coming into your lessons. We were mainly talking about bass. You know, obviously that's what we were there for. But I'm just so tickled that you have this same thing that I do, because I was a composer before I ever picked up the bass. Like I was a composer since birth. Like I've been hearing this music my whole life. And it's like just something inside me that needs to come out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's really important because I said I wanted to talk to you about it because to me, the Jamming on Johnny books are that idea to just allow people to be creative and let that open up because every one of us has that ability to pick up a piece of paper and start to doodle or draw or sketch. Everybody has, you know, people sing all the time, make up things, make up melodies. But for me, it was always writing song, like making compositions, and none of them had to do with like songs.
Yeah.
Like it was always music, like the music itself.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really important for me to give that message because I think I've been teaching so many years, and like maybe every class has its composer, and you were the composer of your class here in Johnny Hamill Bass Studio, which is pretty cool. I've have a number of students gone on, and we can look at that same thing, in our bass heroes. Some of them are great composers too, and some of them are great bass players who don't compose. So it's really a unique thing, and I don't know why, but I really, really love bass composers. Like I know I'm biased, but like it's really good. Not that I don't love composers that aren't bass players. So, but it's really, really cool and important. So I'd say that. Do you have any advice for any young person out there, or even older, that likes to compose but just hasn't had the courage or got anything for them?
Yeah. I mean, it's never too early to start writing things down. I think one of the biggest barriers for me was I'd been writing songs since I was a lot younger, since before I even started playing bass, but I was like, oh, that's not like real music. It's not really composing. But it was. Like, I was still
Mm-hmm.
coming up with an idea and having to like work it out and find what worked and what didn't. And I think the biggest barrier was like I didn't know how to write out my own ideas. So like things we would do in like group class and stuff where I had to like learn things by ear and improvise was a huge help to me
Really?
in
Oh,
figuring out
good.
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Ah, that means the jamming on Johnny is working.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I mean, I would give yourself the space to be creative, and if that's something that interests you, like just sit down and try it. And it's okay if you just write like one little melody and then put it away and come back to it because you still are creating something and working towards writing something bigger.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice, and thank you. I mean, this is why I've been loving these interviews with my former students and getting their feedback because, um, you know, George saw me working with my first young students where we always just jammed and made stuff up. The Funky Toe Jam came from that era. But, the idea for me was always to be creative because I've always been musically creative. Later, I got trained in classical music, writing music. I didn't do that when I first started. I was like you and just kind of untrained. And the fact that George told me to write this book was what gave me confidence to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it also gave me confidence in my own composition because George actually hired me to teach at his workshop, and then he said, "Oh yeah, and you have to put on a concert." And so my first concert, and still really a lot of times when I perform solo bass music, it's just my pieces because it's something I do unique,
Yeah.
and I like that, and I wanted to carve that out, and it's been a nice journey, as you said, that give yourself space and time to find your sound, find what you want to create. That's just like the best advice to all of us. So now I want to go right into this idea of how you manage that with bass performing the bass, right? Because obviously we need to practice the bass, and sometimes that means practicing scales and boring stuff that we don't want to practice. We're not inspired to practice scales. We want to practice scales so we get to the place where we can do the things we want inspirationally.
Yeah.
And the same thing compositionally, right? You have to do certain exercises. Sounds like you've been spending more time on the piano than before you left here.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to get your piano skills in order, yeah? You
Yeah,
think?
I had to take 4 semesters of like piano skills, like basic, like here are your scales and here are really easy pieces, and like work that
Yeah,
muscle up.
yeah, exactly. So when you compose on the piano, do you feel like I compose on the piano, but I actually compose on the guitar and the bass faster because it's my instrument,
Mm.
or at least finding things.
Yeah.
And now I compose even faster actually on paper because I don't have to do the manual step of playing it. But I sure do like to improvise until I call it musical doodling until I find what my brain is trying to tell it to
Yeah.
do. But I can do it on a piece of paper with just pencil traditionally, faster, much faster than I ever did. So to manage that, like it takes delegating. Like you have to become a better time management skills so that way you have time to practice your piano because obviously you weren't composing if you were practicing piano lab. By the way, I took those same piano labs. They're fun. I love the piano. It gave me the skills to play. I mean, I'm not a great pianist, but
Yeah.
like it gave me. It's very important for every music major has to take it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about composition. If you're a composition major, if you have to have even more piano or less, is it the same?
Actually, not as a composition major, but as a music theory major, I have to take an additional
Uh-huh.
semester of like private piano lessons
Yeah. Okay.
to
Cool.
continue to work that skill. So.
Right. Yeah. Because obviously the piano kind of lays out the whole orchestra there,
Yeah.
and I know one of the things I'm excited about Caitlin going to KU is that my composition teacher and really good friend Ingrid Stoltz is there, and you got to work with her and still do. Not just the only composition teacher at KU, but one of the things she would always tell me was like I'd bring my composition into her, and she was always very gracious to me. But she's like, "You need to hear the whole piano range. Like the guitar range is only this big, and the bass range is only this big. Like it's not the full sonic spectrum."
Yeah.
And so the piano is the best instrument for us to really hear what's there, like, and then we can, as you just beautifully piece you wrote out the piano and then sing the vocals in the piano part, and everything sounded good. Um, so were you playing piano on that performance?
No, that was a different pianist in that recording.
Uh-huh.
But
Okay.
I did play through this a couple times with the people I originally wrote it for, and so the piano part had to be easy enough for me to do.
Yeah,
But...
that's what I was thinking. I was like, cause there's a that's well, I got a little bit off tangent. I want you to talk about how are your bass playing skills because you haven't just abandoned that. You love playing in the orchestra.
Yeah.
And last time you were working on some pretty hard solos before you left, and it sounded like, are you still working on those solos, or where's your time going in that world?
Yeah, so I'm still really involved with bass at KU. I play in the KU Symphony Orchestra every semester. I'm currently playing in a chamber orchestra through KU as well, and sometimes like the symphonic band will need like the one string bass part,
Yeah.
and so I'll sub in those concerts. And I still take private lessons every week.
Yeah.
So definitely those skills are not going anywhere. I still practice bass a lot. What did I work on this past semester? Oh, I did more Bach this past semester. I did another movement from the second suite,
Oh, it's really good.
which was,
It's a great suite.
yeah, it's challenging, but it was a lot
Yeah.
of fun. I auditioned with the prelude of the second
Right,
suite
right.
for college, and so I wanted to keep working on some of the later movements.
Yeah, it's
'Cause
great.
I
The
really
jig
love
on that
piece.
one is hard.
Yes.
Still might be the hardest. I don't know.
Haven't quite
Each one
touched
has
bottom
their
yet, but
their things to wrap your brain around. It's
yeah,
so wonderful and stuff. So
for sure. And then I also every semester like to do a more modern piece, and so I did a sonata that was written in like the 1970s
by
as
who?
well. Oh, that is a great question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I don't
pull it
remember off
down.
the top of my head.
Hey,
That's
you're
okay.
on break. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Well, we want to know about that because, like that's the neat part about one of I for the people that Caitlin's been out of. Do you remember?
David Ellis.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh,
Yes.
nice. That's a good one. The whole sonata.
Yeah, I think it's only like 6 minutes. It's unaccompanied.
Yeah, yeah. Great. Yeah. Oh, nice. Now I want to go play that piece. That's what's, I want to relay the story of Caitlin coming into the bass studio because a lot of things that George did for me, I like to do for my students are provide the space for the students to grow into wherever they want to go. Because, there's the idea that yes, I could just only do classical students, that's it, or only rock students or jazz students. I love to do all of it myself, but or only have composition students. Like as the teacher, you could provide whatever you specifically want to provide. Since I'm passionately in love with teaching the youngest age possible bass, as you know, it's very more important for me to think. I don't know where you guys are gonna go. Like for Caitlin, I didn't get the luxury of just starting her at 3 or 4 or 5. She came to me as a freshman. Uh, she moved to Kansas City and came, and I just loved this story because Caitlin just had great first couple months lessons. You just went right through the George Vance books. You had kind of enjoyed that, and we had the group class. She was always at the group class. Some people shy away from the group class a little bit, and then I think it wasn't. It was like you went through all of the books. You were basically at the end of the books pretty quickly. I don't know if it was within a year or something like that. And I just remember this performance. My favorite was that we were doing Russian Sailor's Dance, and she wasn't really quite that far into the books, but she was getting closer to Russian Sailor's Dance, which is almost at the end of the George Vance books. And I said, I have this teaching trick that I said, oh, here, you got to learn the melody. The melody's fun, and it just plays it here and here. So it's the melody is not too much harder than the Mahler, which is in the first book, right?
Yeah.
So I showed her that, and I said, oh, just on this fast part, just play an A. Da 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 da. You remember all that?
Yeah.
And just play that. Don't worry about the other notes. And then, so, okay, cool, that's fun. And I just did this in group class because I didn't want her to not do something. And if she can do something simple, then great. And it really helps learn the piece. One of George's really clever tricks. And then I just remember at the group concert, me and Carolyn looking over at Caitlin while we were playing it, and she was supposed to just be playing the A's, and she basically played the whole thing. I don't know if you, because you didn't do it in the group class, you only did it in concert, and all of a sudden you were like, and it was just so much fun to see
your face was kind of like not like, see, I told you I could do it. It was like, oh my goodness, I'm doing it, which was really, really fun. And I think that's my favorite thing about what I really, this podcast and everything's about is about this idea of providing what you just said, a space for people to grow. And George's books are just such a great space for you to grow musically. Because, yes, the book that I started with, Samando, is a great book, but it's not very creative. It's a little bit more like practicing scales, which is, there's a place for both of those things. But when you give it to a young person and you want to excite them, I mean, you were old enough that I could have handed you Samando, but I don't know if you would have exploded the way that you did, you know?
One of the reasons I learned Russian Sailor Stand so fast was because I liked it so much. Like, that piece was fun for me, and so I went home and practiced it a lot.
That's a good one too. You know, like I sometimes say I'm inspired for like 4 lifetimes. I don't have enough time on this earth to do everything that I want because of George. Obviously, Francois in that mix, and 100 other people, which hopefully you'll find out in this podcast if you just keep watching each episode. But that idea that you're just taking this first little creative thing, as you said, I was just writing songs, and now we have this amazing, elaborate piece, right? It does take work, so it's not, you know, sometimes people are like, oh, I just want to play the Russian Sailors Dance. Well, there's a simple path. Make sure you start at the first piece, and, you know, obviously, Scotland's Burning, play it in all the positions. It gets easier to play the rest of the bass then, right? So it's at least easier. In your case, you're dedicating your time and your energy not only to composition, but you're going to college to study it. That's pretty. That's pretty. That's a lot of work. You know, you could work that hard and do something else, and it might not be as hard. No offense to the doctors and lawyers out there, but I do think being a musician is actually harder than that, and maybe a composer is even harder than that. So that's, you gotta love it. Yeah?
Yeah, I do.
And, you know, so that's just really, really important. And not that we, you know, that was George's saying to me at the same time, because I was almost your age and level of college. I was almost done with my undergrad, and I met George, and then I said, oh, I'm going to do this, because he inspired me to teach little kids. And there's a weight on your shoulders when you're being brave and just wanting to be an artist, right?
Yeah.
Because how are you going to live? How are you going to go? And in your case, there's a great saying, or George said a couple things to me. He goes, yeah, people like myself, I would say you're so determined that nothing's really actually going to stop you except yourself, right? In my case, when it came to how am I going to pay for something, the idea was that I just didn't need anything. I already had music and creativity, and that's all that I needed. At least that's how I really. So I was the epitome starving artist. But you will find the way to do all these things. You know, like you're so good at doing more than just playing the bass and more than just playing the piano. You also have all these other really great skills. Like, I don't know if you noticed that about yourself, but you really connect with other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't dominate them. Some people can connect, but they don't let people flourish. So I like that. Like those skills, that's kind of that idea of where your life is headed is probably more exciting to me than the people that are signed up to be doctors and lawyers.
Yeah.
Again, not that you can do a lot of amazing stuff as a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
an accountant. I'm sure we all have our thing, but I'm gonna trumpet people like you who are doing something creative, something from nothing.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is very exciting.
Yeah, so you have the bass and you are junior year, so I wanted to talk about I got the privilege of helping you work up your college audition, something that I've gotten much better at because when I first started teaching, I had kids that were excited about playing bass, but then, oh, what am I gonna do? I can't just, where else do I go? And sometimes they didn't see the path. And so some of this is this path idea that I helped you walk through the college auditions, and you auditioned to 3 or 4 colleges before you chose KU.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually, I think you actually turned down some money and you went to KU because you liked the composition aspect of KU. But I could be wrong. It's been 3 years.
When I started the process of like looking for colleges and applying, I thought that I was going to be bass performance all the way. But throughout my senior year, I started taking an AP music theory class, and I just really fell in love with that side of it. And I was like, oh, I could actually like do something with all of my composition ideas. And I started writing more pieces. And so when I went to KU and I met the composition faculty,
Ingrid.
yeah, I really, I really got along well with them, and I was like, I could do a lot here, and I don't have to give up bass to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so for my first year, I think officially on paper I was bass performance and composition, but now I'm composition and music theory all the way, but I'm still very involved with the orchestra side of things.
Yeah. So that means that you'll have to go through another audition place, yes, because you are going to go on to masters.
Yes.
You have plans. I already asked her about this, so it's not a new question. But so this idea is very important for all of the people out there because you can see how Caitlin's really found this, got this, and put this next to it, and is building something pretty exciting, which is what I think of college should be viewed as. Because when you're young in high school, again, it's daunting. I mean, I didn't know what well, I didn't want to go to college when I was in high school for sure. I just wanted to play music.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was consumed by it. But I didn't know you could go to college for music, and then I had some people help me, like what I feel like I do for a lot of my students. But that idea of going to the next level and then finding that, and maybe you don't know exactly where you're going when you're in high school. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because people think, oh, I'm supposed to know exactly what I want to do. I'm going to go to college, get in there, get out, or I'm going to go do this. Like it's not. I rarely have a student that actually knows exactly what they want like that. Like, and I think it's absurd to think of that in any kid in high school. Like there's going to be a few, just like there's going to be a few that compose like you. And there's going to be a few that are like, I want to do this, and that's what I'm going to do. But I don't think it's as ever as easy as that. And I think is fantastic. So, undergrad, you had your base helped you pay for
Mm-hmm.
your college, which is nice for especially people to hear. Which is great because I think if we all played violin, it might not be so true.
No, yeah.
So the bass is a beautiful instrument in that regard. And then you might, in your undergrad or your master's, you might find the same, that your bass will help you in scholarships or where you're going to go. Now, again, that idea, the money wasn't the main reason why you chose KU. It was that it fit exactly where you wanted to go. So that's why I usually, as the bass, when I got you ready, I said, I recommend you audition for 3 or 4 or as many as you really want, but 3 is the magic number for me because the people that audition for 1, I found sometimes came back and they were either disappointed and they didn't either get in or whatever, it didn't turn out the way that they wanted to. If they had 3, they really had a wider perspective where you want to go. So the same, probably I would recommend you thinking the same way for the next level. Of course, if something drops in your lap and it's the perfect thing, then that's great because sometimes that happens too, right? So anyway, I wanted to discuss that topic with everyone because I know that's on a lot of minds of the high school level student out there, and even undergrad student where you're going to go to masters, right? Like it's an important decision for you to make because then when you all the energy that you're doing to build gets amplified if you're in the right place, and it can also go the opposite way if you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So I like that KU was the right fit for you.
Yeah.
It's my alma mater, so how can I say it's not? And we should say that the bass teacher there is Richard Ryan, and of course they have a great jazz program too. Caitlin, you said you were in one of the jazz combos at first, and because the composition took over even more, you didn't have time for it, but you're a really great jazz player too, which is nice. Huh?
Yeah, it was nice to have that opportunity because their jazz program has, I mean, even grown in the past couple of years.
Oh yeah.
More combos than they did when I started, but they're really excellent. We go to watch them perform all the time, and I met a lot of people in jazz through that, and so I was really grateful for that exposure.
Exactly. And so the program's really great. So the classical bass teacher is Richard Ryan, who also plays in the Kansas City Symphony, and the jazz bass teacher is Jeff Harshbarger, which is, my dear friend. He's also a fellow Jayhawker, and one of the great jazz bass players of Kansas City, out on the scene, and also really good at helping the bass family connect. Mr. Harshbarger is, if you don't know that. So his mind is in a good place there. But it's a great program, and it's also a great town, Lawrence, I find. It's a very creative and musical town. Like there's more music to there. There's a nice chamber group there, the Lawrence. I don't know if they still call it the Lawrence Chamber Group, but it's very nice. And a lot of cool things come out of Lawrence, Kansas. I know I kind of sucked Lawrence into Kansas City, but Lawrence is kind of its own little vibe, but it's almost a suburb of Kansas City because I definitely drove there a couple of semesters from Kansas City.
Yeah, it's definitely close enough that I live in Lawrence now, but I'll go into Kansas City a lot. But we have a lot of our own music stuff. There's a couple of like local venues that will book a lot of or allow like a lot of college like bands and groups to like play there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so then it's really great to like go out and like support your classmates and friends and
Yes.
hear new music. So.
Well, that's the only reason why I decided to go to Lawrence was I was actually in rock bands, and as far as the rock music scene, Lawrence has some of the great venues. The Bottleneck, the Granada is now. It wasn't there when I was first going there, but it came out when I was there. Very fantastic, and some other places. And personally, I've seen some of my most favorite live concerts, from seeing Edgar Meyer for the first time to Bela Fleck, some of the great punk rock things that I love. It's just a great musical town.
Yeah.
That's and I wouldn't have gone there if it didn't have that myself. But I also worked in those places
Yeah.
like before I ever moved to Lawrence. So from Kansas City, there was always a gig that just took you up there because it's only 45 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we want to talk about these last two pieces before we head off.
Okay.
I think we've covered all the subjects I wanted to do. Do you want to first, is there something before we talk about the video game music here that you wanted to impart? Your wisdom?
I'll just say really quickly before I start talking about my video game project, that kind of is in the same vein. Like, expose yourself to as much as you possibly can. Like, something I really liked about taking lessons here and about going to school at KU was I didn't feel boxed into like just being a classical bassist, even though that's my focus and what I love doing. I still get to talk to musicians who play all different genres, and I got to play all different genres in like group lesson, and even sometimes even let me like jam on stuff in lessons. And that stuff just helped me learn and gain more skills for the things that I really wanted to focus on. Because I mean, having exposure to all those different genres was really great for my composition, and helped me become a better improviser, because that was something I was really uncomfortable with at first.
Really?
So
You've
yeah.
always were so good at it.
I was always so scared. But
Yeah,
I got
I
a
know.
lot more. I got a lot better at it through the 4 years that I took lessons with you. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. That really, I mean, I think of you as one of those people that just started doing it and never really looked. You never gave me the, no, I'm not doing that. You know, like, I don't think so. I don't remember any of that. You just jumped right in. But that's really fantastic advice. I should say that you also, part of the Johnny Hamill Bass Studio, and we haven't mentioned this, but I just feel that we need to, which is the workshops that we have, the Kansas City Bass Workshop, which is slightly different than studying with me, although all of my students, usually the reason why I do the workshops is to provide them the space to go and grow, and there you got to meet some of the really great bass players, including Richard Ryan was on faculty there, and Jeff Harshbarger. But you got to meet Francois Rebath and play for him. You got to meet anyone else that. Who's your favorite of the faculty? You got some really dynamic female bass players.
Yeah. Jessica was always really fun to watch for concerts.
Oh yeah.
Kate was really approachable, and I took a couple lessons with her at the workshops.
Yes. Kate's pretty great.
Yeah.
So, I think that's really important as well. You know, we still, the bass instrument, especially classical bass, and probably even jazz bass instrument, you know, the idea of girls playing it, from people from my generation, like, it definitely, it didn't happen very often. So we're living in a new era, and hopefully you don't ever really get the door slammed in your face because you're a female. But I think we still got some work to do on that, you know, unfortunately. But you play the P out of the bass, so all you got to do is start playing, and eventually, as I said about the other things that you do, your determination is one of my favorite parts of you as a student, because you weren't one that played it perfectly the first time, but you were going to get it.
Yeah.
And I actually have similar qualities as far as learning things.
Yeah.
So you were probably a lifelong learner.
I hope so.
Yeah. So I can't wait till I hear you when you're 100, because that means I'm really still around listening. So anyway, let's talk about this last two pieces of this video game music, which I'm excited to hear you guys listen to, but you want to talk about it.
Someone from the computer science department reached out to the School of Music and said, hey, we have some students who are working on a capstone project writing this video game, and they really want artists and musicians to help kind of make it a full project, so it's not just code sitting there. And so I volunteered. It sounded like a really cool project. They're like, it's going to be a fantasy game. It's geared towards young kids. It sounded like aesthetically right up my alley. So I got to meet with them and also some of the visual artists, animators who worked on the project. And we made 2 little video games. One of them was about a little dragon who has to find his way back home, and then the other one was about a wizard and you accidentally turn your friend into a frog in potions class, so you have to find all the potion ingredients to make them into a human again.
Awesome.
So I had a lot of fun with that project, and I learned that was the first time I really worked with electronic music. I built all of these using a sound font in Ableton Live.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really great experience, and also just working on like a multimedia project was also really great. And then this coming semester, my electronic music class is going to be doing it again and collaborating with that studio again to make more video games for cool stuff.
Yeah, and probably the one of the things that's important for me to remind people of is that, like, I didn't grow up in a house that had classically trained. It wasn't a classical house. It wasn't a musical house, really. My mom was supportive of music. My dad was like, oh, I don't play music, and like they supported um, things, but we didn't go to the symphony on a regular basis, and my mom would play some Mozart records that she liked, but it was not like daily. And I think this, I like to say that a lot of us in America, we get our training, our classical training, or our hearing great composers, actually more through all these other avenues of music. And a big one is video games, because what kid doesn't have a video game player, like by the time they're 2 or 3 now, like they're on it. And the caliber of compositions in video game music is really, been some of the most creative stuff coming out of the last 10 years. I mean, I obviously like all music form genres and stuff, but it's really exciting. So that's kind of cool. I also say, we hear it in commercials and cartoons, and we sometimes that's music from around the world. We have to accept that, and you can really do a lot there and be really good at it, and of course probably make a lot of money making video game music too. So if you get the right avenue, which is again pretty exciting for somebody like you, if your determination is there. Of course, if you don't love it, don't do it. But and that, I guess, I want, before we push play, I want to say that to people out there. I've been to that moment where I was professional in a professional ensemble playing, and I realized that that wasn't the love that I played the music for, and I told them I just stopped playing in those groups, because if you don't love it, it's not worth it, even if they're paying you, in my case, pretty good amount of money. Now, I was a little bit older, so I actually didn't go starve to not do that, but it's the same advice I would say to you in your compositions. Do if you're always going for what's inside you, the world will eventually catch up.
Yeah.
Okay? But try not to be too much of a starving artist. You can always come over here. I'll feed you anytime. Okay, we'll listen to these tracks on the way out. We're gonna play the first one. Is this one? What's this? Yeah. The dragon one or the wizard?
This one is the dragon one. It's like the main theme that you see when you first open up the game.
Okay, it's short enough. We're gonna play it, and then we're gonna say the next one. Okay, thanks. Okay, it looped. And now here is the wizard one. All right. Well, we're going to say goodbye on that. I sometimes use that as the outro, but I forgot one thing as I was doing it, is that you actually got a commission to compose here coming up.
Yes, for a chamber orchestra in Lawrence.
Nice. So almost a 20-piece chamber orchestra. And so that makes you feel really good, right?
Yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Like somebody's actually saying, hey, we need you to compose this piece for us. So we're looking forward to that. And we want to thank you for stopping by.
Yeah.
It's always good to see former students and see where you're growing. Come back anytime and we'll play some bass.
Sounds good.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the episode of Jammin' with Johnny Casey Bass Stream. Please don't forget to check out johnnyhamel.com and caseybassworkshop.com to keep updated on what's new. I would also like to remind you that I'm an independent artist and music educator. I'll continue to shine the light on bass players and work to build cool creative community that does independent art. That includes my own. I deeply appreciate your support of the artists that are interviewed and to support the things that I do. On both websites there are donation buttons, marketplaces, merchandise, and like buttons. Every little bit helps.